Hi Flashes, today we are going to be talking about dividing decimals. So when you divide decimals, your second number here, which this second number is what we call the divisor. Your divisor always has to be a whole number when you're dividing. So in this example, all of our divisors are whole numbers, so let's just review how we divide, okay? So your first number, the dividend, is the number that is on the inside of your division problem. And then your second number, your divisor, is the number that is on the outside of the division problem. So you're just going to divide this problem like normal. So just think of this as like 201 divided by 3. The only thing that the decimal does is in your answer, you're just going to shoot that decimal point straight up, and just make sure that when you start dividing, you're placing your numbers in the correct spots so that you can get the correct answer here, okay? So first thing, can 3 go into 2? Nope. So now you're going to look at 20. So 3 goes into 20 how many times? 6, because 3 times 6 is 18. Now notice how when I took 3 into 20, I put the 6 above the 0. Okay, so now watch what happens. 20 minus 18 gives me 2. I then bring down my 1. So then 3 goes into 21 how many times? 7. So notice how the 1, I'm going to put my 7 above the 1, which is going to be after my decimal point, okay? And then as always, just check to make sure that you do get a remainder of 0, okay? So when we took 20.1 divided by 3, as you guys saw, we just divided like normal, and I shot up my decimal point, and we got 6.7, okay? The only thing here is you guys saw that it's a negative 20.21. So we did throw some negatives in here, so please be cautious of that. Remember, when we are multiplying and dividing with numbers, I taught my students the Christmas tree. So you have your presents at the bottom and your star at the top, which would be indicated by the plus sign. And this Christmas tree only works with multiplying and dividing numbers. So when you take a negative divided by a positive, you cover up one negative, you cover up one positive, and whatever you have left is the sign of your answer. So in this case, a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So our answer here is negative 6.7. Alright, so let's try the next one. So 64.35 divided by 5. Again, your first number is your dividend, so that would be the number that goes on the inside. And your second number, the divisor, is your whole number of 5. Okay? So again, just divide like normal. So 5, oh wait, I forgot to move up my decimal point. I like to do this first just so that I don't forget it later, and it helps me place where my numbers go up at the top, okay? So now let's divide. So 5 goes into 6 one time. 5 times 1 is 5. And I get a remainder of 1, so now I can bring down that 4. 5 goes into 14 2 times, so notice how I put my 2 above the 4. Excuse me. 5 times 2 is 10. That gives me a remainder of 4, so now I can bring down my 3. 5 goes into 43 8 times, so now I'm going to put my 8 above the 3, which is going to be after my decimal point. So 5 times 8 is 40. 43 minus 40 is 3. Bring down my 5. And lastly, 5 times 35, or 5 goes into 35 7 times. And that will give me my remainder of 0. Okay? So our answer here is 12.87. Go back to see if there were any negatives. There were not. So my answer is just going to stay a positive 12.87. Alright, so let's try one more here. So again, your first number is the number that goes on the inside, so 380.32. divided by our -4 here. Shoot that decimal point up so we don't forget about it, and let's go ahead and start dividing. So 4 does not go into 3, so now we have to look at 38. So 4 goes into 38 9 times. And remember, you're not putting the 9 above the 3 because you're looking at the number 38. So your 9 will go above the 8. 9 times 4 is 36. So 38 minus 36 is 2. Bring down your 0. 4 goes into 25 times, so I'm going to put my 5 above the 0. 4 times 5 is 20. Remainder is 0. Bring down my 3. 4 goes into 3 0 times, so I'm going to put a 0 above the 3. 0 times 4 is 0. Bring down my 2. So then 4 goes into 32 8 times. So my answer here is 95.08. Go back and check your negatives. So here I have a negative divided by a negative. So using my Christmas tree, I'm going to cover up both negatives, and whatever sign I have left is the sign of my answer. So in this case, our answer is going to be positive. Okay, so that's how you divide decimals by a divisor with a whole number. Now let's divide our numbers here when our divisor is a decimal. So let's see what happens when we start dividing with the decimal. So again, your first number is your dividend, so that is the number that goes on the inside. And then your second number, your divisor, is the number that goes on the outside. Now, you cannot divide unless this divisor is a whole number. So right now it is a decimal. So what we're going to need to do to make it into a whole number is we are going to need to move this decimal point all the way to the right, so that now instead of 1.5, this is now 15, which is what we want. We want this number to be an outside number, so we needed to move that decimal point to the right to make it into a whole number. Okay, so just like with fractions, whatever you did to the bottom, you had to do it to the top. Same thing with decimals. Whatever you do to the outside, you have to do the same thing on the inside. So how many times did we move this decimal point? We moved it 1 time. So you also have to move this decimal point 1 time as well. And again, as soon as you move that decimal point, I would go ahead and shoot it straight up in your answer so that you don't forget about it later. Okay? Once your divisor is now a whole number, you can start dividing like normal. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, does 15 go into 1? No. Does 15 go into 11? No. However, 15 does go into 110. So if I were to figure out, okay, 15 goes into 75 times, so let's see if I can go higher. 15 times 6 is 90, so let's see if I can go one more. 15 times 7 is 105, so it is going to be 7 because that's going to be the closest. And again, make sure you're putting your number where it needs to go. So we were taking 15 into 110. So I need to make sure that my 7 is above my last number there, which was the 0. Okay. So 15 times 7 gave me 105, and I'm subtracting those. 110 minus 105 is 5. I am going to bring down the 8. So 15 times 3 is 45, so 15 times 4 is 60, which is a little bit too much. So we are going to keep the 15 times 3 to give us 45. This will give us a remainder of 13. Bring down that 5. And then 15 goes into 135 9 times. And if you guys don't know how many times a number goes into something, you may have to get like a separate sheet of paper and just start writing down the different scenarios. So like if I had a notepad, okay, and I'm like, man, I really have no idea how many times 15 goes into 110. Well, just start guessing. Let's say you wanted to try 6. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 3 is 9. So that was 90. So I can go a little bit higher. So that's when you try 7. And that gave us the 105. So you're just trying out. Yes, I know it's more math, and I know some of us don't like to do more math sometimes, but it's really just a guess and check kind of game to see what number can get us the closest to the number that we need. Okay. All right, so once you get your answer, go back and look at your negatives to see if your answer is going to be negative or positive. So here we had a negative divided by negative, and a negative divided by negative is going to give us a positive. All right, so let's try the next one. So here we have -9. So again, your first number is the number that goes on the inside, divided by 0.3. So again, you cannot divide with a divisor that is a decimal. You have to make this into a whole number. So to make it into a whole number, you have to move that decimal point all the way to the right until you cannot move it anymore. So after you do that, so this 0.3 now turns into a 3, whatever you do to the outside, you have to do the same thing on the inside. However, there is not a decimal point on the inside like there was over here. So you have to make your decimal point. Now, in any whole number, where is a decimal point at? Is it before the 9 or after the 9? If you guys said after the 9, that is correct. So you guys need to fill in your own decimal point. And now we can move our decimal point. So here we moved our decimal point 1 time to the right. So here I am also going to move my decimal point 1 time to the right. And what do you guys think we should fill in that empty space there? A 0. Okay. So now we can divide like normal. So 3 goes into 9 3 times, because 3 times 3 is 9. Get a remainder of 0, and then we can bring down the 0. So 3 goes into 0 0 times. So our answer here is 30. Now remember to go back though and look at those negatives. So if we were to take a negative divided by a positive, and I use my Christmas tree, and negative divided by a positive leaves us with a negative. So our answer is -30. All right, so let's try one more, then I'll have you guys try a couple on your own. So this next one, 7.2 divided by 0.12. Again, your first number is your inside number. And then your second number is your divisor, which is your outside number. Again, when you are dividing by a decimal, you cannot divide by a decimal. You have to always make sure your divisor is a whole number. So what you're going to do is you're going to move this decimal point all the way to the right to make it a whole number. And you need to count how many times you move that decimal point, because whatever you do to the outside, you have to do the same thing on the inside. So since I moved this decimal point 2 times to the right, I am also going to move this decimal point 2 times to the right. Okay. And as soon as you see that empty space, you fill it in with that 0, and then you can go ahead and shoot that decimal point straight up so that you don't forget about it. All right, now you can start dividing like normal. So again, if you don't know how many times 12 goes into 72, get out another sheet of paper and just start doing a guess and check game. So let's say 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. So I need something a little bit higher. So let's try 5. 5 times 2 is 10. That gives us 60. So let's see if we can go one more because we're trying to get to 72. 6 times 2 is 12. And that does actually give us 72. So 12 goes into 72 6 times. And again, I'm putting the 6 above the 2. And it goes in exactly. So I'm going to get a remainder of 0. Bring down my other 0 that I still have, so that then 12 goes into 0 0 times, and I get my remainder of 0. So my answer here is just a positive 60 because I took a positive divided by a positive. Okay, so there are 2 questions down here at the bottom. Let me try one of them with you so that you guys can see how you're going to round. So when you're finding the quotient, so that's an answer to a division problem, we want you guys to round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So when we're talking about the nearest hundredth, you are rounding to the second number, because this is the tenths place and this is the hundredths place. Now remember, when you round, you are always going to have to look at the number behind it, because when you're looking at the number behind it, that's going to tell you how to round your hundredths number. So remember, if your number is 5 or greater, you are rounding this number up 1. If your number is not 5 or greater, you are going to leave your hundredths number alone. So if you're rounding to the nearest hundredth, how many decimal points do you need to go out in order to figure out your rounding? Well, we will need to go out 3 decimal places. So that's what this question is asking. How far must you go to be able to round to the hundredth? Well, hundredths place is the second spot, but you need the number after it in order to see how you're rounding the second number. So you need to go out 3 numbers to round to the hundredths. Okay. So let me do the first one with you guys, and then you guys can try the second one. So again, your first number is the number that goes on the inside, and your divisor is your second number that goes on the outside. Again, this number has to be a whole number. So if it's not a whole number, you need to move that decimal point all the way over to the right until it cannot be moved anymore. So how many times did we move it? We moved it once. So whatever you do to the outside, do it to the inside, and go ahead and shoot that decimal point up so you don't forget it in your answer. Alright, so let's start dividing. So 24 does not go into 7. So if you wanted to put a 0 there, you're more than welcome to. 24 goes into 74, so here's another guess and check game if you don't know. Let's try 24 times 3. That gives us 12. That gives us 7. So that got us really close. That got us 72. So I'm going to use 3 here. So 24 goes into 74 3 times. And that gave us 72. 74 minus 72 is 2. I'm going to bring down that 2. Now notice how 24 does not go into 22. So since 24 does not go into 22, we're going to put a 0. So 24 times 0 is 0. And then you're also going to have to add another 0 because, again, if we're trying to round to the hundredths place, we need 3 numbers after the decimal. So I still need to try and get one more number here. So I'm going to add a 0 at the end of my 7.42, and I'm going to bring it down. So that now I'm trying to figure out how many times does 24 go into 220. So again, guess and check game. 24, let's try 8. So that's 32, that's 13. So I do need something higher. So let's try 9. Ooh, that got me really close. So that got me 216. So 24 times 9 gave me 216. And then this is where I can stop, because notice how now I have 3 numbers here. Okay, so if we're rounding to the nearest hundredths, again, you're looking in the hundredths place, so you're looking at our second number here in our decimal, and you're looking at the number behind it. If the number behind it is 5 or greater, you are going to round your hundredths place up 1. So is 9 5 or greater? It sure is. So I am going to round the 0 up 1. So if I were to approximate my answer here, it's going to be 0.31. All right, I want you guys to pause the video, and I want you guys to try and do number 2 on your own, okay? So go ahead and pause the video, set up your division problem, see what you guys get, and round it to the nearest hundredth, and then press play when you're ready for the answer. Okay, so let's see how you guys did. So you guys should have had 66.98 divided by 3. Now notice how this outside number was a whole number, so you didn't have to move anything, so that was nice. So now just move up that decimal point and let's start dividing. So 3 went into 6 2 times. Remainder 0, bring down the other 6. 3 went into 6 2 times. Remainder 0, bring down your 9. 3 went into 9 3 times. Three went into 8 2 times. And notice how you get a remainder of 2, but we do want you guys to round to the nearest hundredth, so we need one more number here to help us out. So I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down, so that then 3 goes into 26 times, and this is where I can stop, okay? Because now I have 3 numbers to help me round this hundredths place. So what you guys should have done was look at your hundredths place and look at the number behind it to help you round. Is this number 5 or greater? It sure was, so you guys should have bumped this 2 up to a 3. So when you guys rounded it to the nearest hundredths place, you would have gotten 22.33 as your approximate answer. So good job if you guys got that. If you did not, see where your mistake was at and fix it for me. And then if you guys have any more questions, please let your teacher know.